Hello, YouTube. I hope you are well. I'm trying to use YouTube more often so that I can actually keep people up to date, but most of the details of my life are kind of boring. Right now I'm not working and I'm taking SFE and I'm trying to get a PhD position and all kinds of little stuff, but none of that's all that interesting. So I'm going to try to talk about something that I'm working on that is sort of interesting. And if it's not your thing, go ahead and turn it off. No big deal. Of course, that's always the case. But I'm writing a book. I've actually got like four that I'm interested in writing, and each of them is a giant series. But I finally figured one to actually start on, and it is what I have pleasantly called the Becky the Blank series. So I'm going to talk about the premise now. And if you are interested or want to be a pre-reader, and somebody who reads something before it's edited and ready and, trying to publish, then shoot me an email at carlyfightsbatman@gmail. If you are not interested at all in literary stuff, why did you click on this video? It will say literary in the title. But anyway, here's the premise. The premise is kind of magic detective-y. I was reading some magic detective novels because some of my friends are super into them, and they come off as really sexist and a little misogynist. And they have all these characters where they kind of glorify these incredibly imperfect, and I know it's part of the genre because noir is all about how awful people can be and internal monologues and terrible writing. But some of them, it just kind of seemed insulting, like super important. And some of the authors, that was their original intention. They were just going for trying to be as tropey and cheesy as possible. But I kind of wanted to write an anti one of those. So I wanted to write a detective story in which the main character is involved in magical shenanigans. But I wanted it to be a woman, and I wanted her to be competent and to be surrounded by guys who were always mansplaining stuff to her, and for her to basically be able to ignore them. So I settled on, I really enjoyed Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. The show took me a little while to get into, but I really like the character of a girl who is thrust into this world and sees it through the lens of being a girl. Instead of, your masculine monsters are there, I have to defeat them. So I made Becky, and what makes Becky special in this? The premise of the world is that magic is everywhere. Vampires, werewolves, goblins, all of it. It's everywhere, but magic kind of works to keep its house clean. So whenever something magical happens, magic will just naturally cover it up and make it look like, an accident or something like that. And that's why there's so many people missing, and that's why so many weird things happen. And also, people are affected by magic, and that's why you feel really, really comfortable in certain places, and you're unable to feel comfortable no matter what you do in other places. So Becky is a null arcane, which is somebody that magic doesn't work on. So basically, when everybody else is grooving to the beat of that invisible song that you're hearing, she doesn't, and other people find her weird because of it. But that also means that when a vampire snatches somebody off the street, she sees it, and everybody else just sees, two people going on a date. So for her, what makes her special is that she can see things that other people can't. And magic doesn't work on her. So she sees all this stuff, and usually the type of person that she is, a null arcane, doesn't survive to adulthood because the monsters see that they can be seen and they don't want to be seen, so they kill whatever children. I know it's a little dark. Don't immediately get into the super darkness, but there is some darkness in the very beginning. Anyway, it's the story of a girl who was kind of poor in Texas, grew up in a house with way too many people, and went to a junior college because she couldn't afford a real college. And this is the story of her finally leaving her parents' house and getting out there And the story of how she kind of becomes a hero, because up to this point, she's been taught to be afraid of all these things and be afraid of magic and be afraid of everything. And so whenever she sees magical stuff when she's young, she just runs away from it or quietly, carefully moves away in a way that doesn't attract its attention because she doesn't want things to know that she can see them as they are because she has no real defense against it. So the story starts with her going away to college and how different it is for her because her normal life at home was kind of sheltered. She really only had one friend, and she went to work and she went to school, and that was it. And so this is kind of a coming of age thing, but also a coming into herself thing because, like I said, up to this point, she's just been trained to be afraid. So it's interesting. I'm enjoying writing it. It's still in the, I have written of this story many, many times, but I'm actually sitting down and writing the official, this is going to be the end version. It needs to be expanded. It needs to be edited. But I'm finally at the point where I'm kind of comfortable with people reading it. And I'm, getting it out there. But that's what I'm doing. If you're wondering what I'm doing besides playing video games, applying for jobs, and keeping the house clean, that's what I'm doing. I'm working on a book. And it's coming along pretty well. I'm pleased with it. I have a couple of people reading it, and they are awesome people. But I know that, people are wondering what's going on with me, and that's what's going on. Anyway, that and having weird revelations about stuff based on music. So, little things that I'm thinking about making a video on, and if these are interesting to you, leave a comment or something so I'll know to come back to them. You ever notice that, in hip-hop, whenever there's two people, there's one who's serious and deep and kind of awesome and really good at, technical rap, and then there's one who's just kind of crazy, who's a genius, but is also just kind of loopy and weird. For my generation, it was Public Enemy, where we had Chuck D and Flavor Flav. But then for my wife's generation, they had Andre 3000 and Big Boy from Outkast. And Dre and M was another one. But most recently, not even most recently, about a decade ago, Jay-Z and Kanye. So that's interesting to me. And also I heard vampire music this morning for some reason in my car. My playlist played 3 vampire songs in a row. And I was thinking, I think that if vampires exist, they would use things like Twilight as PR. Because in the 90s, we had this RPG called Vampire the Masquerade that's there's all these types of vampires, and here's their individual weaknesses. And then Twilight was no, there's not types of vampires. Vampires don't have weaknesses. The reason they don't go out in the sunlight isn't because they'll die. It's because they're sparkly, and that's silly. Also, they're virgins, and they won't even they're not dangerous. They're not sexual. They're safe. Vampires are nice, man. They play baseball when it's raining so that the thunder will disguise. Oh, Jesus Christ, it's so stupid. But it sounds like exactly the kind of thing that a group of people who've been around for hundreds of years would use to cover up their vampireness. It'd be oh, no, forget those serious shows where vampires murder people and are, wanting to bang everything. Forget those. No. Innocent, basically just sad old virgins. No danger at all. Don't worry about vampires. And I think that's vampire PR. I think that's what it is. And I'm doing this with the window open so they can't silence me because there's sunlight right there. Anyway, if you're interested in either of those two, leave me a comment or something. If you're interested in being an editor, feel free to go send me an email. Other than that, I know that it's weird. This whole thing is weird. And I am really just stunned that people watch these videos. I'm not that interesting. But I hope that you're all good. And I hope everybody's still healthy. And do the best you can. And take care.